Thank you for tuning in. Today it's Tuesday, an awesome day to be alive. I actually did a part one to this call a couple weeks ago, and it's up on my YouTube channel. If you missed it, you can go watch the recording. We went over the first 5 impactful sentences, I guess you could call them, or phrases that will really change your conversations, whether it's in this business or in everyday life. I've heard some of my girls say that they've used it with their coworkers and with their friends, just for everyday conversations with their bosses. And so super cool to hear that you guys are applying all these tools, not just in this business, but outside of it. That's really awesome to hear. That kind of feedback. So today I'm going to share 4 more phrases that are going to help make your conversations impactful. Okay. So I'm only going to share like maybe 4 or 5 at a time. So that way you get a little bit of a teaser and you want to come back to me. Okay. You're going to come back to my trainings. All right. So, if you don't know, my name is Ruth. I've been in the business a little over a year. I'm pregnant with my first baby, married. I have a fluffy dog. Her name is Sushi, and I'm pretty passionate about life and helping people and just becoming a better version of myself each and every day. And this is what this business allows me to do. So let's get started, okay? So the 6th phrase leading off from last time's call is when would be a good time, okay? So I'm sure that there's a lot of scenarios in this business where you need to schedule a phone call, where you need to schedule a lunch date, where you need to schedule a training with somebody, a one-on-one, and even in your personal life, where there needs to be a point of contact that needs to be made, right? So the most common problem that people face is the people that they're talking to respond with, I don't have enough time. There's not enough time for me to do blah, 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 right? Does anybody experience that kind of objection very commonly? Cool. So we all relate to this problem is people are responding with, I don't have enough time. So an example for you to use this phrase, when would be a good time, is when would be a good time for you to take a proper look at this? Or when would be a good time to get started? When would be a good time to speak next? And this makes sure that you get a response in, well, this day at this time will work for me, rather than it being an ambiguous response of, I don't have enough time. Why? Because with the question, when would be a good time, it's creating the assumption that they have to pick a time, that they have to pick a time to speak with you next, that they have to pick a time to read that document that you send over to them, or watch the video that you send over to them, right? Because the question is very assumptive, and it's a question that allows you to take control of the conversation, right? Instead of it being, will you have time on this day to do this thing? That question right there allows for somebody to say yes or no. And the problem there is the no part, right? They could say, no, I don't have time. And so you never want to ask a question that opens up the opportunity for them to respond in a negative way, right? So that's why we're going to use the question, when would be a good time, rather than do you have time? Okay. And then when you're speaking to these people, you want to make sure to schedule a precise time and date with that person, right? When they respond to you, Wednesday would be really great. Make sure that you get, Wednesday, April, whatever, at this time is when we're going to speak next. The precise date and time. That way you're maintaining control of the conversation. You're maintaining control of what's happening next, and that prevents you from having to do these weird follow-ups where you're like stalking the person for several messages, and you feel really weird about messaging them again, like, hey, are you still there? And they're actually ghosting you. You have a set time. And people don't want to break that commitment that they've made to you, right? Also, when you get to the part that you followed up, it's now time to follow up with Stacy at the agreed time that you've made. Make sure that you don't ask them what they thought about the thing that you sent over to them, right? If you sent them a video, don't say, so what did you think of the video? Because it makes it really easy for them to bring up bad news. Well, I didn't really like how this lady said this. It made me really feel overwhelmed, or blah, 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 right? It opens up the opportunity for them to bring up bad news. So what you want to swap, what did you think of it, with is, what do you like about it, right? It's forcing them to answer with a positive statement, right? You're only allowing them to give you something positive. Does anybody have any questions for when would be a good time? Okay, if you do, write it in the chat. I'm going to move on to the next one. So the next one, number 7, is, I'm guessing you haven't got around to. I've used this several times when people sort of like don't respond to me, if they kind of ghosted me. I'm guessing you haven't got around to. So instead of saying, how did it go? This allows you to preempt an objection. Preempting means like kind of like fortune telling, right? You already know that they might have a negative answer, right? They, like, let's say, for example, Stacy says, well, the last time, well, I got to talk to my husband and then I'll get back to you. So instead of saying, hey, how did it go talking to your husband? You say, I'm guessing you haven't gotten around to talking to your husband about this, right? And the reason why is because if you just say, hey, how did it go with talking to your husband? They're going to feel, they're going to be able to say, I haven't talked to my husband. They're going to be able to say something negative, right? And again, we're trying to avoid the negative response. So, for example, if you say, I'm guessing you haven't got around to speaking to your husband, they can't use the excuse of, I haven't spoken to my husband, because you literally just said that, right? And so instead, they're going to respond in one of 2 ways. The first response is they're either super proud, yes, I actually did talk to my husband about this thing, or the other response will be that they're embarrassed, that they haven't talked to their husband, and that they will promise you to make that promise right, and to write that fact, right? So because you preempted the negative, and now they feel embarrassed that they haven't spoken to their husband yet, without you having to say anything else, they will frantically promise you, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I haven't talked to my husband yet, actually. I promise I will talk to him tonight, and I will get back to you tomorrow morning. That's what that question, or that phrase allows for that person, for that situation to happen, is for them to immediately promise you a new promise with when they will get back to you, right? So some other examples could be, I'm guessing you haven't got around to setting a date yet. I'm guessing you haven't got around to looking over the documents. I'm guessing you haven't got around to making a decision yet. So with that one, if they say no, you're right, I haven't, then you can open up the conversation for negotiation, right? And then if they say, yes, I actually have come to a decision, then you can say, great, when are you ready to get started, right? So the reason why this works is because most people are people of their word, or at least they feel like they are, and they want the world to think that they're the people of their word, right? And so they will feel bad when you call them out for it, right? And that's what you're doing by using, I'm guessing you haven't got around to. Cool. So the next one, number 8. Oh, do you do this with just market partners or VIPs too? Both. You can do it with market partners, VIPs. You can do it with your husband. You can do it with your, your coworkers. You can do it with literally anybody. These phrases apply to business recruiting and business sales and personal life and anything else. Hopefully that answers your question. So number 8 is simple swaps that I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you 2 simple swaps. So one of a very common mistake that people do is they end a presentation or they end a conversation or a phone call with, okay, do you have any questions? And the reason why that isn't very good is because if the person doesn't have any questions, it makes them feel peculiar, or it might even make them feel dumb, right? And you don't want to put them in that situation because then they'll become defensive. And the reason why is because that question, do you have any questions, makes them feel like they should have a question, right? And so asking that encourages them to leave the decision making conversation that you're in and say, okay, I have to go and think about this, right? And that's something that we want to avoid, is them saying, I need to think about it, right? Because then you're losing control of the conversation. So instead of saying, do you have any questions, what you want to ask instead is, what questions do you have for me? This question puts you back into control, right? So if they don't have any questions, and that means that they've made a decision, right? So now you're in the perfect position to go ahead and ask for what that decision is, right? You're able to get that decision right then and there, rather than them saying, hold on, let me get back to you. And then it also helps avoid saying something like, I need time to think about it, etc. And then the next one, let me make sure I went over that really well. Right, so I just want to ask real quick, does it make sense what I'm saying when I say it, that a certain phrase allows you to be in control of the conversation? Somebody nod their head for me. Okay, cool. So I'll move on to the next one. If you have questions about that, just make sure you type it in the chat, please. So the next common mistake that people make is, can I have your phone number? Or can I anything? I really cringe when somebody asks, can I? Because what this does is it forces the other person to say yes or no. And again, we want to prevent the person from using a negative response, right? And the other thing that it does is it doesn't allow you to stay in control of the conversation, right? And a lot of what I've been talking about is putting you in control of the conversation that you're having with whomever it is you're having a conversation with, right? So instead of saying, can I blah, 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 can I have your phone number? You want to say, what's the best number to contact you at, right? What's your email? Not, can I have your email? What's your email? What's your date of birth? When I used to work for a marketing firm, people would praise me for being able to get credit card numbers so easily. And I didn't do anything special, you guys. All I did was say, I used body language, and right, we talked about this in the last call, how powerful body language is. But all I did was say, what did I say? Credit card or debit card, right? And that's a question that puts you completely in control, right? I put my hand out, and when you put your hand out, right? Again, body language is super strong. They have this urge like, oh, I gotta pull my wallet out and give her a card. It's gotta be credit or debit. Well, I like credit better, so I'll give her credit. Right? Instead of it being, can I have your credit card? Do you see the difference, you guys, in the questions? Rather than it being, can I, it's what's your, or is it going to be credit or debit? For an example, obviously we don't ask for credit card numbers here, but that's just an example. And so, yeah, the point of that is that people will effortlessly hand their information over to you. When you ask a question that puts you in control and doesn't give them the ability to say yes or no. All right, last one, number 9, you have 3 options is the title of this one. So something to note is that people hate to feel manipulated, and they want to feel like they made the final decision, right? I'm sure you guys have heard that before. Maybe you've heard some dating tips that men like to feel like they're in control. Well, it's the truth about everyone. Everyone wants to feel like they're the ones who made the decision. Everyone wants to feel like they're the ones who are in control. And so even though this whole time I've been teaching you how to have control, you're going to, your goal is to help the other person feel like they are in control, okay? And so basically when you give somebody 3 options, it allows for you to, it allows for you to seem like you're being impartial, right? You're not trying to manipulate them into making a decision. You're just simply presenting what 3 options they have. And the reason it works is because you're leaning the 3 options, with the 3rd option, the very last option, being the one that you want them to choose and making it seem favorable. So an example, this is a long example, so make sure you have your pen and paper down. And you follow along with me. So with this example, just imagine that you're looking for somebody to join your business, right? We're all here trying to grow our businesses, right? We're all leaders, trying to build our businesses up. And so we're always looking for someone to join our business. And let's say that this person you're speaking to is on the fence about it, right? Then this is something that I would say to them. So you're currently in a job that you kind of hate, you're not enjoying it so much, the hours are long, it's keeping you away from your family, and the money is nowhere near where you would like it to be. I've shown you a business opportunity and you like it, but you're not sure exactly what to do. So let me pause right there and explain. So with that, I've laid out on a silver platter all of their pain points, right? We've talked about this in the last call. It's super important to point out their pain points and recall it, keep it at the forefront of their minds, because we all make decisions based on how we feel, right? So just from saying that, like, I feel like somebody's like throwing arrows at me or something. And I don't want to be in that job, whatever job I'm describing in this sentence. I don't want to be a part of it. So moving on as I continue. So talking to this person, right? As I see it, you have three options. So the first option is you could look for another job, work on your resume, send out applications, go through interviews, and work through that entire process to perhaps find another employer offering you a similar package and more than likely expecting the same kind of work for the same return. Second option, you could do absolutely nothing and stay exactly where you are right now, accept that your current circumstances are as good as it's going to get and just suck it up. Or the third option is that you could give this a try, working it alongside what you're already doing right now and see how far you go. Of those three options, what's going to be easier for you? So here's what I did, right? This is very similar if you've attended one of my VIP trainings. It's very similar to how I get VIPs. I give them three options. The first option, obviously, they don't want that. they don't want to stay in their sucky job that's making them miserable, that's got them interested in this business opportunity you're offering them in the first place, right? It's the whole reason they're talking to you. They clearly, that's the second option. They clearly don't want to stay in the same spot that they're in. And then the first option, I've listed out all the things they're going to have to do if they say no to this business, and if they don't want to stay in their current position, they're going to have to do this and this and this and this and this, and it sounds overwhelming, right? And honestly, finding a new job is so overwhelming. I hate the interview process. Does anybody else feel that way? I freaking hate it. And whenever I do something, I go hard at it. So even for a freaking interview, I will stay up studying all night, Googling, like, I will Google the person that's going to interview me. I will Google the company. I will Google the position. I'm going to have like a journal of notes, and I'm super prepared for this interview. And it's only one interview. I've got 9 more interviews to do. And each one of them I have to study for, or at least that's how I personally approach it. So in my mind, this first option that's being laid out to me is super overwhelming, and definitely not the decision that I want to make, right? The second option, like I talked about, is the clear reason why the person is talking to me in the first place. Of course, they don't want to stay in the same spot that they're in. Of course they don't. I mean, they haven't gotten a raise. They're working too hard. They're barely making ends meet. They're not able to go on vacations, like, et cetera, et cetera. They freaking hate where they're at, right? So obviously the second option is not the choice that they make. So what does that leave us? The third option, where it was the shortest option, right? I only said one sentence on the third option. The first option, I said like 2 or 3 sentences. The second option, I said like 2 or 3 sentences. The third option, I said, or you could do this and it can be amazing, essentially, right? So what option do you think that they're going to pick? The third one, the one that you want them to pick. And because you've given them those 3 options, even though you've made the third one favorable to you, they feel like they're in control. They feel like they've made the decision. Does that make sense? So super cool, you guys. I think that these are super cool things that I've learned throughout my lifetime, and I'm really happy to share these phrases with you guys. And so now I'm going to leave the rest of the time up for a couple of questions that we can go over. And if you loved what you heard today, then you can go ahead and return to my next training for part 3. If you guys liked it. Feedback, you can turn your mics on, you can open the chat. Did you guys like today's training? Okay, good. And would you like a part 3? Okay, awesome. And are there any questions? We're running out of time. Are there any questions that you guys have over anything I went over today? No? Or I'm sorry, let me correct myself. What questions do you have for me? None? Okay. All right then. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you do end up having any questions, I'm an open door, so you're welcome to message me or post it in the group chats, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Also,